Good evening and welcome to another edition of Money Talk with Melanie. I am your business diva, Melanie Collette, and I am so very happy to be broadcasting live from beautiful Cape May County, New Jersey. And it's dark now every day at 5 o'clock when my show airs. I'm not really feeling the dark, but but it is what it is. What are you going to do? But I'm very happy to be here. Happy to say hi to the people who are starting to load up in Facebook. How you doing, Wendell? And I'm happy, very pleased to have my guest today, Corey Poirier, who's a keynote speaker and author and entrepreneur. Just fantastic. His latest book is called The Book of Why and How, subtitled Discover the Timeless Secrets to Success and Abundance. I'm really excited that he is back on the show. He's been on the show before. Lord knows I could use some positivity. And if we seem like we're on a bit of a roll after I do a little bit of news, that is because I just had the pleasure of Corey interviewing me for his show. So I'll probably touch a little bit on that as well. So very excited to have him here. Hello, Clayton, Jay, Chad, Donna McCleary, Gina. Hi, Torrin. Donna will be very happy to hear. Donna's a long time friend of mine. It's been like really long. And we're still 29. I can't believe it, Donna. But we've been friends for some 20 some odd years, even though we completely disagree politically. But I think you're going to really like today's show. You're going to like Corey, Donna, for sure. Torrin, hi. So I think you're going to be excited about that. But before I get you excited about Corey, I am going to have to talk a little bit about what's in the news, which is the tax bill. And no, Miss Donna, you are not going to be broke. I promise you. It's not going to happen. You're not going to be, you have nothing to worry about. You're not going to be broke. So I thought that I would touch, since it is a money show, as part of the news, that I would talk a little bit about.
You're not going to be broke.
Talk a little bit about the tax bill and about what it entails and how it's going to possibly affect you. And I can assure you that I'm going to be working on getting the tax mama, aka Eva Rosenberg, on the show, who's a friend of the show and a show sponsor, to talk about the deets about the tax bill. I will definitely be working on that. And if you haven't been to her website yet, shameless plug for my sponsor, taxmama.com, go there, because she will answer your tax questions for free. So you might want to do that. But I don't know if anyone noticed, like it might have been in the news, that we passed a brand new tax bill. You can no longer say that the president didn't get anything done. We finally got something done. The Do Nothing Congress finally got something done. It's a $1.5 trillion tax bill. Now, some companies like Comcast have already started giving out bonuses based on the tax bill. How about that, Donna? People are giving out $1,000 bonuses just because they got a tax cut. The biggest cut is the corporate tax rate was reduced from 35% to 21%, which allows a lot of them. Corey Poirier is in the chat, who's our guest today. So excited! Thank you for joining the chat, sir. Hi, Luther. But companies are giving out bonuses, and if Donna, if you and I worked in the private sector, we'd have it made, but but we don't. So we're not getting any extra checks due to the tax cut. Donna said, who are those businesses going to? If you work for Comcast, you're getting a $1,000 bonus. And I think AT&T is giving out a bonus. There's a few companies that are giving out bonuses just based on the fact that their taxes got cut. That's going directly to the people, to the little guy, not to executives, to the worker bees. So that's a good thing. Maybe we need to get out of teaching, Donna. No, that's a good thing. So that the tax cut has had a direct impact. I mean, you may not, I know you don't love President Trump, but you have to give him credit for this one. He pushed really hard to get it done by Christmas, and now we're going to see a reduction in our taxes by February. we should start seeing like bigger paychecks by February. So I think it's a pretty exciting thing. As far as the individuals go, it lowered individual rates. There's still 7 tax brackets, unfortunately. That was supposed to be simplified, but they changed the rates. So the rates are now going from, the new rates are going to be 10%, 12%, 22%, 24%, 32%, 35%, and 37%. And those are lower rates than they are today. And here's the thing that's kind of funny though. And hi, Mike Fitzpatrick. Here's the thing. Oh, come on. I'm going to say what I'm going to say before I respond to Donna's comment. Here is the thing about these rates is that people who are not paying taxes now are getting a tax cut as well. Kathy Barnett and Ron Edwards, welcome. I'm so happy to have you here. I'm flattered that media persons in their own right would take time out to listen and watch my show. Thank you. And in answer to your question, Miss Donna McCleary, since when are Democrats concerned about the debt? You guys were not concerned about the debt when they passed Obamacare. Remember how expensive that was? And Republicans were like screaming about that. Do you recall that? Like that happened. I'm just saying. So like you don't get to like be like concerned about the debt now. You just don't. You don't get to do that. How's the bill going to be paid? You don't want debt left for your children. Stop that. That's our line, Donna. I'm sorry. I mean, I'm kind of kidding, kind of not, but it's true. And I'll tell you how it's going to be paid. Real talk from a financial perspective. How it is going to be paid. You already see that companies just on the don't talk about Obama. Just in the very beginning, these people getting money, what do you think they're going to do with that money? They're going to spend money. That is going to stimulate the economy. And if you check your pension funds and your 401ks, they've already been growing, okay? And more jobs are going to be added. One company, thank you, Kathy Barnett, for bringing that up as well. One company already said, I think it was AT&T, said they're going to add 200,000 jobs, okay? And that stimulates the economy. And by the way, the economy's been near 4% growth over the last year. It was at a meager 2% during your precious Obama's time. And now I'm over my break. So I'm going to take a break real quick, because y'all got me on a roll already. But I'm going to take a break real quick. And when we come back, we're going to talk to Corey Poirier. So excited to have him. Just great energy. It's going to be a fun show, which I certainly could use, and I hope you guys could use it too. You're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. I am your business diva, Melanie Collette, and we will be back in a few moments.
The type of occupation in America now will dictate her style of life or death we as Americans will experience in the future. Hello, I'm Ron Edwards. On today's page from the Edwards Notebook, the recent tainted election in Alabama is a sad reflection of what has permeated the republic. First and foremost, the depth of deception is deeper than even I had imagined. Who would have thought that the voters of Alabama would choose outright socialist Doug Jones, who was in total lockstep with the vision of former President Barack Hussein Obama, over Judge Roy Moore, who with his flaws would at least be an ally of President Trump's laudable efforts to literally make America great again. They knew Moore's long history of patriotism and understanding the true liberty, recognition of our God-given rights of self-protection, lower taxes, etc. Personally, I believe that Jones got a little help from the allowing of convicts to vote and alleged tampering with electronic voting machines, but things are the way they are. The deep state and swamp dwellers are feverishly trying to stop President Trump from successfully restoring American greatness. The one and only way they will be defeated is if we the people are more fully informed and will not be fooled into voting for people like Jones, who literally would destroy your rights and your republic. I'm Ron Edwards.
Sponsored by the Tri-County Liberty Coalition.
I don't know if I've mentioned how much I absolutely adore the one and only Ron Edwards. think that I have mentioned it a time or two. And that is Ron Edwards, the same Ron Edwards that is in the chat, who, by the way, I had the privilege of being on his show last week, the Ron Edwards Experience, which airs I don't know, I think it's every day, Monday through Friday, at 4 p.m. Ron, if I'm wrong about that, do correct me in the chat. But I had the privilege of being on his show last week, so I was very excited. I want to welcome Doug and Kathy and JR. Hi, and Louie, how are you? Or if it's Lewis, I apologize. But I want to say hi and thank you guys for joining us in the chat. So let me introduce my guest, who is just so encouraging and positive, and I love having him on the show. And I thought that we would do something. I'm tired of talking tax reform. I don't know about you. So I thought we'd talk about something a bit more positive and talk to Corey Poirier, who is an award-winning TED Talk keynote speaker. And if you've never seen a TED Talk, do yourself a favor and go there and Google it and get yourself some TED Talks. They are just the most encouraging things. Corey's also the host of a top-rated radio show. He's a 20-year plus year entrepreneur, an international best-selling author, and he's interviewed more than 4,000 influential leaders and me. So, without further ado, welcome, Corey. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, Melanie, and I'll say that it's 4001.
Oh, you're very kind. Thank you so much. Thank you for doing the show. You like for coming back, because you could have like not come back. And thank you for interviewing me. It was so that was just really a pleasure. I almost cried when you asked me that last question. We'll talk about that. Talk about that later. I got a little choked up. I'm just saying.
Yeah, my pleasure, and thank you for you certainly knocked it out of the park. So thank you for making that magic happen.
Oh, thank you. You're too kind. So let's talk about what it is that you do. You're a sick. How many times have you done a TED Talk? It's probably more than that by now.
No, it's 2 times. So I've done two TED Talks.
Okay.
And or I guess TEDx Talks. I mean, it's really interchangeable now, the 2 different names.
Sure.
And I'll say that I can't really say a whole lot about it, but I'm talking with somebody about another one right now. So I'm going to probably say soon to be 3.
And that's the thing. Like, if you've never, only the best of the best do TED Talks. Like, you can't just, call them up and say, I want to do a TED Talk. No, like, you have to be, yeah, I'm just saying. And you do yourself a favor. And it's TED.com, if I'm not mistaken. Go there and check out TED Talks. And not for nothing, people, I get asked every now and then how I get my guests. One of the ways that I get my guests is I go look at TED Talks. And if I see someone that I like or a TED Talk that I enjoy, I will contact their media person and see if I can get them on a show. That's one of my little media secrets that I actually haven't shared with anybody. I don't know if anybody else does that, but that's one of the things that I do is find people from TED Talks. But they're wonderful, and yours are just fabulous and encouraging. Love it. So
well, thank you. You're so kind.
Just really, truly do. So you are a successful entrepreneur, a successful author. You've conducted 4,000 interviews of influential leaders. What is the best thing? What's the most impactful thing that you've learned from any of those leaders?
Wow. So it's a different answer depending on if I'm saying what's the sort of common secret sauce that I've discovered, or if it's what's the thing that sort of shook the foundation in terms of a one-off. So I can give you both answers.
Please.
Well, the one-off, and this is, and it depends, obviously, as you know, Melanie, where we're at in our life at the time,
Sure.
How it's going to speak to us. So this is right now the one that jumped out to me as soon as you said that, and it is often a regular one that I share that really was a moment that I kind of went, wow, I have to incorporate that somehow. And it's an interview that I was doing with a leader named Robin Sharma, who wrote a book called The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, which sold about 5 million copies, and he wrote 10 other international bestsellers. And what he talked about when I asked him about how to live, let's say, a fulfilling life or a successful life, he said that he always tried to do what he I don't know if you learned it directly from him or heard him say it, but what Warren Buffett said about figuring out what you want your life to look like when you're 80, and then, when you're sitting on that rocking chair or sitting out in the deck at 80, and then figuring out what you have to do from now until then for that life to happen. And let's say it's whatever that is. Let's say it's 10 big things, like write an international bestseller, or father or mother X amount of children, or whatever that might be. And then figure out what steps you have to take, whether it's each year or what have you, to do it. And then basically what we suggest is reverse engineer it. So figuring out what's the smaller steps you need to do for each of those milestones to happen, so that when you're 80, you'll have the life that you want to have personally and professionally. And what I think is really cool about that is it may not end up being exactly as you planned it to be or you strive for it to be. But here's one thing I do know, that if you aim for as high as possible, even if you fall a bit short, it's better than if you don't aim at all. And so your life might look different at 80 than you planned by the time you get there, but by having a focus, a plan, a goal, and taking those actions, I really feel you're going to have a more fulfilled life than if you don't take those actions and you don't have that plan. So that was the one-off that really just kind of shook the foundation for me and moved the needle. If I talk about what's the sort of common traits, one that I can tell you, but I think I'll give you a second one, because this one it's either an all or nothing. It's that the people that are working at the highest level and most successful are living on purpose. So they've discovered their passion and they're living based on their purpose or their passion or their calling. But again, because that one is a little tougher, anybody can do it. Anybody can uncover their passion. But some people listening may have already done that, so that's no-brainer for them. And the people that haven't, they'll probably either stumble upon it or they need somebody to show them how, and we do that kind of stuff as well. I have exercises to help people do that. But if I go to one that's something somebody can start applying tomorrow, because I think it's always important to have the action ones.
Sure.
I would say another one that's sort of a common one, it would kind of be like the number 2 or 3 trait, is they understand, so these high achievers understand the importance of saying no to all the things that don't push them toward their goal, so that they can say yes to the few things that will move the needle and push them further toward their goal.
You are so right. Now that resonates with me, and it probably resonates with a whole lot of people in the chat and other people who are listening in SHR Media Land and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio. That is, especially when you're a helper, right? When you're somebody who likes to help, you always want to say yes to everything, but you can't. You just can't. And I think it's one of the most difficult things.
Yeah, and I have to say too, Melanie, that it's really challenging. Like I'm one of those people that we'll call them maybe a doer, or I could even say when I was growing up a yes person, because I grew up in a small community, and I was even taught by my grandfather, who was like my biggest mentor, that basically you should say yes to everything, and then you'll figure out how to do it. It's kind of like anybody that asks you to do a favor for them. We grew up in this small community, almost like a farming community, and it was just be polite and say yes to everything. But then I go and do these interviews, and I see that these highest of achievers, they're saying no more often, and they have a whole system to make sure they say no to the quote-unquote distractions that would take them away from their goals, so they can say yes again to all the things that actually are keeping them on purpose. So I guess I'm saying I echo what you just said, that it wasn't easy for me to make the transition, but I also knew that I had to, because the people that I were studying, that's what they were doing.
And you're so right about that, because I'm a yes person. I'll admit it. It's hard for me not to pick up that call when I know that somebody probably wants something or needs some of my time, and I legitimately don't have it. And then the next thing you know, your stuff's not getting done. Your goals are not being accomplished, but you've helped other people, which is never a bad thing to lift others up. And that's certainly, I'm sure, not what Corey's trying to communicate here. But what I hear you saying is that, we really have to make sure that we stay on task and ask ourselves those questions. Now, you shared with me while we were chatting before the show, kind of like what your guidelines are. Is that something you would like to share with the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. And that really, I guess we can say, ties exactly into this whole idea of knowing how to say no, what to say no to. And to kind of echo what you just said as well, Melanie, I'm certainly saying what I try to do is I try as often as possible to do as much as I can to help as many as I can. But at the same time, I also know that there's only so much you can do. And then if you take on more or the wrong stuff, you're actually doing a disservice to the people that you could otherwise help. So I only say that because, I'm not saying, turn down your best friend when they ask, can you lend me an ear?
Right.
I think you have to use sort of your better judgment as to what the no's and yeses are. But here's a little system, what you're referring to, that guides me in terms of how I live my life, but it also allows me to know what to say no and yes to for the most part. I use this as a 90% rule. So basically what that is that I've said and I discovered over the years that I want to be the person that, and these are my five keys, that if I'm doing these, I'm on the right track. It's basically that I want to be the guy who motivates, donates, inspires, educates, and entertains. And so what that means to me is that if I'm speaking, then I want to be doing most of those five. I want to be, entertaining, educating, inspiring people. If we're running a radio show and I'm interviewing somebody, I want the interviews to do some of those, hopefully all of those five things. If I'm writing an article, I want to incorporate those five things. And also, it even goes into my personal life. If I'm hanging around with friends, I want to try to entertain them. I want to try to inspire them. I want to try to motivate them. I want to try to give back. That's the donating part. And so really, that's my 5-test system. And so what I do is if I'm taking on stuff and I'm worried I'm taking on too much, then I start asking myself, is it most of those 5 things? Like each thing I'm doing, is it going to accomplish most of those 5 things? And if I come up and a lot of the things I'm being asked to do are going to be 1 or less, then it makes it easy to start saying no to certain things. And then the secondary part to that is, how do you say no? Because that's another big part that's challenging for us people that that don't really want to offend anybody, and we want to do what we can to help everybody. And what I guess I use as a system, it's what I learned from a guest we had in the show. Her name is Shailene Johnson, and she's the creator of the Turbo Jam product. And so what she said is that when people ask her to take things on, she lets them know that her family is a major priority to her. And so she'll say, you know what, I got to talk to my husband, see what else we have on the go. And if it's okay with you, then I'll get back to you. But if I can't help you, I'm going to try to refer you to a couple people who can. And I think if you say no that way, it's really hard to get mad at the person.
It's true. Instead of just like totally shutting them down and say, no, I don't have time.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's my 5-part system.
I like it. That's excellent. I mean, and I think, to have a criteria and have some structure to it, just keeps us on track too, right? Not only, keeps other people at bay, but really keeps us on track and kind of focused on what our goals are,
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, it's worked for me in a few different ways. One, we were talking about this whenever you were visiting my show, but it helps me align with legacy to make sure that what I'm doing now is going to help people in the long run. It's going to, fulfill the track that I'm on. If I'm trying to have an invisible impact, it helps make sure I'm having more of that. It helps me decide, as we said, what to say yes and no to, so it keeps me productive. I use that sort of system in many different ways. And really what I call it is my personal mission statement. And I kind of loosely took the mission statement that companies use and reformed it for myself. So whenever you see a company that says our goal is to, like Disney, to make people happy, well, mine is to make sure when I'm working with people that I'm finding a way to donate to them, to motivate them, and you see where I'm going from that. Sure. So I actually basically sat down and determined what I want to mean my personal mission statement or my purpose statement to be, and that's what came out after quite a bit of work of trying to figure it out. And like I said, it now guides most areas of my life.
That's fantastic. And I think you asked me about mine. I said I think most of the time it's just, is it helpful? Is what I'm doing helpful or not? Like yes or no? Is what if what you're doing is not helpful, then you may maybe not do it. It's very simple, but I need to adopt that. That is very good. Now you've interviewed 4,001 people. No, I'm kidding. 4,000 influential people. That's an incredible amount of interviews. How do you? And you're very good at it, by the way. I mean, really ask some poignant. You're like, you don't have to prepare. We're just gonna, talk about you. Those questions were not like super easy. That was not, they were not super easy questions, in my opinion. And actually all I mean by that is that they were very thought-provoking and really made you dig kind of deep for answers. And so with those 4,000 people that you've interviewed, you know, what things have you learned? And I have to imagine that you've learned a lot.
Yeah, so the first part, I'll reverse it and say a lot, but then I'll dive deeper. And I will say too, it's funny because when you mentioned the 4,000, I added the 4,001. I should add it's well over 4,000 now. 4,000 is kind of we track it, and because if you're quoting a number, you want to make sure you can back that up.
Sure.
And so I don't know exactly where we're at now. I haven't looked in a bit, but I know we're well over 4,000. We're probably closer to 4,500. So not that matters. I only just like to say, because somebody might say, "How would he know it's 4,001 right in the dot?" type thing.
Right.
And the other thing, because people ask a lot of times, how is that even possible? So how that happened, and it's all those interviews are documented. And how it happened is I had a publication before our radio show. And for the publication, I had to do somewhere in the range of 80 to 100 interviews a month. And that publication ran for over 5 years. So you can start to see where the numbers add up pretty quickly in terms of those interviews. And I had a publication before that where I'd done interviews. And then now, I guess, 3 shows, 2 podcasts and a radio show over the last number of years. So anyway, just if a person's saying, how do those numbers work? And so that's where it sort of... that's why it was all possible, and how it all became possible is because of the amount of interviews I had to do every single month. So in terms of some of the things I've learned, I shared the importance of saying no. That was a huge one. The reverse engineering, sitting there at 80 and saying, like asking yourself, if I was 80,
right,
what would I have to do to become that person? That was another one. If I go deeper than that in terms of some of the common traits, I mentioned passion and the idea of people figuring out what their purpose is and their calling and living their life like that. The personal mission statement, I found that whether they name it that or not, most of these high achievers have their own mission statement, what they're working toward. So above and beyond that, another big one is, and I term it this way, that lifelong learners are leaders. And
yes.
So what do I mean by that? The people that get to and stay at the top, typically speaking, are the ones that keep efficiently, I'll add that word in, feeding their mind with the right wisdom.
Yes.
And that's a big distinction because, another one is that I've learned that today we're in an information-heavy, wisdom-light society. So what I mean by that is we're bombarded with information, but we have to struggle to find the wisdom.
You need to say that again. Repeat that, because you glossed over it, and I need you to say that loud and succinctly, because that is a bit of truth right there, is what you just said. Say it again.
Yeah, so what I've noticed, observed, and witnessed and experienced myself is that we're in an information-heavy, wisdom-light society.
There it is.
And if people question that, just think of your Facebook feed. You're just getting bombarded with information over and over again, but how much of it actually shakes your foundation or moves the needle or makes your life massively better? And it's the same way if you're trying to sort through information to find out, like if you type in public speaking, something I coach people on and teach people. And if you go through that and you type in public speaking, you'll be inundated with article after article after article. But the question is, how many of them are going to take you to the next level as a speaker? And so going back to that point, it both ties together, the learning side and the information-heavy, wisdom-light. Because what I've discovered is these highest achievers, they feed their mind long after most people stop feeding their mind. And at the same time, they don't just feed their mind, they know how to get to the efficient stuff each day to feed their mind, rather than getting bogged down for 4 hours and then going, what did I actually learn?
Yep.
So it's a two-parter.
Yes, that is very true. And listen, TED Talks is one of those sources, at least in my mind, where you can just really get good, solid information and advice, and they're really quick. They're like, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes, a lot of these quick TED Talks. And, I call it being a nerd. The more diplomatic term is a lifelong learner. And you're right. There's a shortage, and there's a shortage of actual wisdom out here. And that's really, learning is great. But when you get to wisdom, that's when you've really done it.
For sure. And, Melanie, I'll add for people that kind of say, is this true? Has it been always the case that lifelong learners are leaders? And the answer is yes, absolutely. Back in quote unquote the day, we had the proof. It was books they were reading. So they used to say readers are leaders. And then I switched that and said, years later, leaders are readers, because I always thought it matters what you're reading. It's not just that you're reading. I mean, you can read 50 Shades of Grey and Harry Potter, and it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to become successful in your business.
No, I don't think they are the sources of wisdom.
Right. So it depends what you read. But then what's really cool is now you brought it up, TED Talks. We could bring up podcasting and radio shows. And the cool part is today you don't have to be a reader anymore. There's so many learning on demand options. But saying that, if you think about it, if you want proof that this has always been the case, think about the leaders of yesterday. All the leaders of, say, the 30s and 20s, and Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich talked about him studying all these leaders. And what do they all have in common? They all had personal libraries, even if they only finished grade 3. I don't think that's a coincidence that they all were readers and they all kept feeding their mind, even if they never finished high school. And they were the people that were sort of the people that sort of led the day and were the people that were the biggest influencers back then. And I don't think anything's changed in that regard. So going back to the original point, learners are leaders. Lifelong learners are the top leaders. And the lifelong learners that can get to the right sources, like choosing TED, if you watch a TED Talk every day for a year, I believe you wouldn't recognize the person that you're looking at a year later.
I totally agree. And and here's the thing about the TED Talks is that there are people they are everyday, normal people who have overcome something you're going through right now. And they can tell you basically in 10 to 15 minutes how they did it. And they're just powerful.
Absolutely. And there's some great ones that, and I'll say the example. One that came to my head when you were mentioning that, it's not something that everybody goes through. Well, it is, I guess, but they wouldn't try this experiment. Let's say not everybody would. But there's one, and I can't remember the name, but the gist is this gentleman decides to go for 100 days of rejection. So what he does is he basically, for 100 days, he goes and tries something that he would normally never do, knowing he might get rejected. And basically, he did this experiment for 100 days of saying yes to almost everything, but he went to the things that he would normally get rejected to do. And, the rejection side of it is something we all face every day.
Sure.
So listening to his journey, you can learn so many insights about, first of all, you get motivated and inspired by what's possible. Then you get to hear him talk about stuff that he had no business doing, but he went and did it anyway. And so it goes from that to then the other day I was watching one where this guy talked about how this is something we experience every day. It's not earth-shattering, but it's really funny, is what he did was he decided to reply to the spammers, that will send you a message and say, can you help me out of this country? We want to ship you $5 million to your bank account. And so what he did was he actually started responding to them and getting into conversations with them. So like somebody would say, I'm in this certain country and I need out, and if you send me your bank account number, we'll send you $1 million from our trust fund. And they wanted him to open this bank account. And anyway, he found this ad from this bank that basically they said you get a free toaster if you sign up. Right. So he spent the whole email back and forth. He kept talking about, yes, but I want to know about my toaster first.
That's great.
But that's two total extremes, right? And it's something we all experience every day. It's universal. Like I said, one may not be earth-shattering, the idea of how you deal with spammers. But at the end of the day, I think it's still something we can learn something from, relate to, get a good laugh, and it takes us out of our day.
Absolutely. It certainly does. And like I said, they're quick and dirty, 10 and 15 minutes out of your life. And you get so much from it, at least in my opinion. I have seen countless just encouraging and helpful and helpful TED Talks. They've been. I took a long trip one time on a bus. I was working on a campaign, and I was on the tour bus, and I literally just listened to TED Talks the whole 3-hour ride, and it was like the best. And listen, all the other kids are listening to music, and I'm listening to TED Talks, but they were great. We're gonna take a quick break, and then we'll be back in a couple minutes. When we come back, I want to talk about the book of Why and How. I'm really interested in what that's about and when the audiobook is going to be released and all that good stuff. Tell us about all that stuff when we come back on the other side of the break. All right, Corey?
Sounds perfect to me.
All righty. You're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. I'm the business diva, Melanie Collette. We'll be back in a few moments.
My name is David Barnett, and I've been helping people buy and sell small and medium-sized businesses since 2008. So far this year, I've gone on 5 vacations. It's because I've got my own business. When you get tired of being managed by someone else and you decide that business ownership is right for you without the risk of starting your own unproven enterprise, then come over to businessbuyeradvantage.com. There are over 100 YouTube videos on buying and selling businesses that you can watch for free. That's businessbuyeradvantage.com.
Who likes paying taxes? Nobody. That's why Eva Rosenberg from TaxMama.com wants you to pay less of them. Read Small Business Taxes Made Easy and learn how legally hiring your spouse and children can slash your taxes. Learn how to set up a business plan that minimizes taxes, the benefits of setting up an exit plan, how to avoid getting audited, and how to legally increase your deductible expenses with better record-keeping techniques. Don't let the IRS squeeze you out of every penny. Visit TaxMama.com. Click on Ask a Tax Question to get free answers to your tax and business questions. That's TaxMama.com.
And we're back. You're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. I'm your business diva, Melanie Collette. My guest today is Corey Poirier, who's an entrepreneur, speaker, and author of the new book. I think it's relatively new. You'll tell me. You'll correct me if I'm wrong. The Book of Why and How, and the subtitle is Discover the Timeless Secrets to Success and Abundance. So in the next few minutes, you're going to tell us like all of the secrets to abundance, right?
Yeah, well, it's funny because we've already been discussing some of them, actually. For example, the idea of how you feed your mind and what you feed your mind is one of those sort of timeless secrets.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I really, like you were saying about us having abundant information and short on wisdom, I really don't think that people are considering the time that they're spending listening to junk and looking at junk and consuming junk for the mind.
Well, and it's funny because and that was one of the challenges even whenever I started sharing the stuff that I was learning, is the question of what is a secret, right? Like the you go to the movie The Secret, the book The Secret, and the idea behind that was the law of attraction. And the truth is that wasn't the secret to a lot of the top achievers over the years. And they might not have called it the law of attraction, but they knew that their mindset was drawing things to them. They knew that a positive mindset was bringing positive things.
Exactly.
And even if it just means you're surrounding yourself with positive people, you're going to have more positive outcomes because you're going to be more inspired to do things in a more positive way. But I guess much the same way, it's the challenge of what do you call a secret? Because somebody could say, well, I know I should be learning. I know it's important to grow. But what you just said was the key thing, Melanie, is that just because we inherently know something doesn't mean, first of all, we're doing it in the right way, or that we know that we're let's say spending our time doing it in an ineffective way. And so, for example, we talk about how you feed your mind. Well, that is more the secret. It's what do these high achievers do? And it's, you said it, they go to the sources. So it might be a TED Talk, or they might go and they might say, okay, who are the 3 or 4 people that I admire that are doing the things I want to do, and what ways can I access their insights? Whether that's through their podcast, their LinkedIn profile, blogs they write, whatever that is. So for me, what I recommend to people, I say there's no way you can go to 500 sources every month. So I think you have to figure out who, for whatever timeline, but you need to pick 3 or 4 sources that you trust. Maybe it's somebody like a Zig Ziglar and you go to their Facebook page every day and read one of the quotes and that inspires you every day.
Or Corey Poirier, it could be.
Yeah, or it could be. Or it could be, like, it could go, like you said, to the TED site and say, it's just going to be TED Talks. Or it could be, I want to listen to audiobooks. But all I'm really getting at here is that, and here's the two-parter, is that you need to figure out what those sources are. And then the cool part is, the fact that we can now learn on demand, you can actually avoid the distractions. So the distractions is the part that people forget when they say, oh, I already know that I should be learning. But they don't necessarily realize that they're going to get pulled off track for 2 hours trying to learn for 15 minutes. But if you pick your sources and you go directly to them, you're actually bypassing all that information that comes to you that would be otherwise a distraction. So I think it's the learning on demand that makes it such a secret now in terms of what they do differently.
Absolutely. And I don't know if you find this or what you think about this theory, because I do have this theory. I know I shared with you about the study I read about what your gut instinct is, right? How your brain takes in all this information, right? Even when you're not actively listening, your brain is still working. Your ears are still working. Your brain is still working. You're taking in all this information. And I was sharing with Corey earlier that I read this article that said, actually what your gut instinct is your brain just processing that information as quickly as you need it. And so information that you don't even consciously necessarily know that you have. And so I said that to say, I wanted to ask you, is there another component? And let me back up. I also feel like you can be listening to a TED Talk, or like I think I told you that I listen to I try to listen to the Bible daily, a couple of books daily. Even if you're not actively listening, and I try to actively listen, but even if you're not, your brain is still absorbing that rather than absorbing whatever junk could possibly be on the TV or anywhere else. I don't know how you feel about that, or just having a positive vibe in the room.
Yeah, so this is, we mentioned, I think during our previous interview, the one we just did earlier today about woo-woo. People use that term woo-woo.
The woo-woo, right.
Yeah, and so, I'm not, and so, first of all, full disclosure, I'm not a woo-woo person, but at the same time, I'm also a person who, I'm not absolute in the sense that I don't say, okay, I don't believe there's such a thing as a negative or a positive energy we're carrying around with us. So I guess you could say I'm a practical person. And the reason that I believe, for instance, like you just said about, do I believe in certain terms of if we have something that's positive playing, that we're taking that in versus if we had all negative playing, I agree 100%. And my backup to that, for anybody that sort of doubts that there's an energy that sort of we feel, if you will, or pick up on, think about whenever you're at a party or a house that you go to, and 10 people are in the room, and the dog is going nuts, like loves everybody, licking everybody, and then that 11th person comes in, and the dog growls and doesn't want them in the house, and every single time that person tries to come in the house, the dog's the same way to that one person.
Exactly.
Or you think about the person that a baby will just never let them pick them up, but they let everybody else. I'm not trying to say that means that they're a bad person. It just could be something that they have a negative energy. And so I think, though, and another example too, Melanie, is if you walk in and a couple is just having a fight, you can feel that.
Yes.
And if they were just making out, for lack of a better term, you can feel that too.
True. Love is in the air.
Yeah, and that's exactly. We believe love is in the air, but then we question whether or not we can carry negative energy around with us. So long story short is I do really believe that we're picking this stuff up. I do believe that this stuff is around us in our environment. And so I feel personally that you need to try to, first of all, build up. I don't think it's you're depositing. So I believe you're depositing whatever you want to call it, inspiration or positive energy. And what I think is people say, how come you never seem to be unhappy? And I think it's because I built up like a month of excess positive energy. And then so when something negative happens, it's only beating me up for that day rather than the 30 days I had built up. So I believe in it so strongly that for me, not the woo-woo way, not in the way of I'm like in the house going, oh, I can sense the energy, but just like in the sense that I do believe that we do carry negative or positive around with us, and the more positive we are, the easier it's going to be for us to remain positive.
Exactly, and to just surround yourself with that. For me, I feel it's the Bible. I try not to go a day without having absorbed some of that, because I need it. to carry on. And I was sharing with Corey, I said, sometimes, the Bible's not all that positive, depending on what it is that you're reading. Like, you might be reading a couple books that's like, they're warring, or the Israelites are being reproved for whatever crazy thing they did at the time. And I do have to go switch to like a motivational speaker to be a little more up. But you do need that positivity, and your brain is incredible and is always absorbing those things. And I just do think that's really helpful.
So, and Melanie, if you're okay with it, I'll give a practical strategy.
Sure.
People can actually use, like literally starting 5 minutes after they're done listening to this interview. And it's an exercise that we have in the book, that we've been talking about. And so the exercise is fairly simple. The book, we actually have like little worksheets and stuff you can use. But the truth is, when I first discovered it and did it, it wasn't something I heard from somebody else. It's just something I was wondering. So here's the quick backstory: is I was dealing with anxiety and I was dealing with some negativity, and I was able to, by finding my passion, a lot of that sort of disappeared. But then it was coming back a few years later, and so I said I got to figure out what's different. And so the big thing is I had moved across the country, and so my friends were different, my circle's different. So I said, well, what I want to do is I want to figure out, am I surrounding myself with mostly positive or negative people? And so I would have guessed that it was probably like 16 positive, 2 negative, just on a whim. And so what I did, though, is I just basically took out a piece of paper and I said, I came from a sales background, so I was used to like pros and cons, like what's the reasons the customer should buy, why shouldn't they? Right. And so I used the same sort of system. They used to call it the Benjamin Franklin close in sales. I never believed in these old sales strategies, but I took certain things from them. And so I took a piece of paper out and did the same sort of thing, like a pro and cons list. But instead of pro and con, I said, I put the people that I spent the most time with on a list, let's say 18 people. And then I put a plus besides the ones that I truly felt were bringing positive energy or good vibes or positivity to my life. And then the ones that were bringing toxic energy or negativity or, the rumor mill people, gossip, all that kind of stuff. And I put in like a negative. And I wasn't saying the person's negative or the other person's positive.
Of
it was
course.
Just logically to say which ones are sort of surrounding me, which ones are bringing the positivity and which ones aren't. And so what I did, once I had the list, then I put the positives on one side, the negatives on the other. Because it was only 18 people, it wasn't that I didn't really have to do it that way.
Right.
If you had 100 people, you would. If you have 2, you don't. But what I wanted to see was how it balanced. And what ended up coming out was it was like 15 negative and 3 positive.
Wow.
And I felt it been the exact opposite.
Wow. And you know what's really incredible about that is that, you hear these self-help people and, inspirational people always say, you need to write it down. You need to write it down. And you're in your mind, you're going, I don't need to write it down. I know what it is. But truth be told, you need to write it. This is why you need to write it down. You need to write it so you can look at it.
Well, and the harder part too is that's really the exercise right there, is just to do that. And then you can figure out who you're spending your most time with. But of course, there's a step 2, which is shorter than what I explained as the first step, which is that now you have to decide. So, the step it takes longer to do it, but in terms of me explaining it, it's very simple. Now you have to decide, out of those people, if you're surrounding yourself with mostly negative people, then you're probably figuring out why every day it's hard for you to be positive. So now you have to decide, who am I willing to spend less time with? Who do I have to maybe, and this is hard to say, but who do I have to remove from my life? And then if I have a lot of negative and not many positive, what can I do to bring more positive people into my life?
Absolutely. And I would think also maybe part of that is kind of like examining, like, now I'm going to be more aware when new people come in, right? Like developing that awareness and that caution, maybe even call it wisdom to be more on top of my game before I let it kind of get to that point, I would think.
Yeah, you're 100% right. You become more aware automatically once you go through that exercise, because now you start going, oh my God, I can't believe, if you are in that case, I can't believe, whichever way. You might say, oh, I have way more positive than I thought, or vice versa. And by the way, a part 2 to that, like a totally separate exercise that a person can then do, and this one might be easier than deciding on people to remove or reduce in their life, is then you got to ask yourself, okay, what about the other activities? Because it's not just the people, right? So do I read the front of the newspaper and get excited to read the negative news? Do I scope through all my Facebook trending things to see the negative news? Do I go all the time do I go there all the time with people when they start gossiping? And the flip side is, what are the positive things I do? So do I go to, do I attend seminars? Do I read positive books? Or do I read negative books? And so the second part is, of course, what are you feeding yourself?
Yep. It's so very true. So important. That's why you asked me that question about what my daily routine was, and I said I end every day in cartoons.
I love that. I said it then, and I'll say it now.
That is awesome. Listen. That's that is part of the reason, is because I don't. I watch a lot of news and stuff because I'm involved in politics, and at the end of the day, I want to zone out and watch something positive and funny and laugh before I go to sleep. For sure. We only have about a minute left. Please tell everybody where they can get your book, if they want you to speak, how they can reach out, all that good stuff.
So we didn't talk about the other side, Melanie, which is my speaking side. We sort of hinted around about it in terms of the fact that I mentioned I coach other speakers and people to speak. So if somebody's wanting to learn how to speak from the stage for impact, for fees, whatever that is, they can visit us at thespeakingprogram.com. And if they sign up there, they get access to some free video training as well. The book itself was just out. It's coming out again in late January. So if you go to thebookofwhy.com, that's where everything's going to be sort of announced. And then finally, if you want to reach out to me and connect with me, CoreyPoirier.com. So those are kind of 3 hubs.
Love it. And like his Facebook page. It's pretty awesome.
Oh, thank you so much. So humbling.
Absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much, Corey, for everything. And it's been just a lovely evening, I have to say.
Thank you so much, Melanie. The feeling is mutual. And thank you for all the great work you're doing.
And you as well. I hope you'll come back.
Awesome. I'd love to.
Awesome. Have a great night.
You too.
You listen to Money Talk with Melanie. I'm your business diva, Melanie Collette, and I have to close the show. Remember, all of this is all very important because, after all, it's your money.